What would you do if your husband was served divorce papers right after your child's birthday party, just hours after he saw your ex there? Why did he demand a DNA test that changed everything for our family? The answers started with a single invitation and ended with me losing control of my own story. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. I should have known something was wrong when Marcus went silent during Ellie's 8th birthday party. Not the comfortable silence of a man enjoying his daughter's happiness, but the cold, calculating quiet that meant his analytical mind was working overtime. "Mom, why is Uncle Joel here?" Ellie whispered to me as I arranged the pink and purple balloons around our modest suburban living room. The question caught me off guard, though I'd been expecting it. "He's not your uncle, sweetie. He's just an old friend of Mommy's," I said, smoothing down her dark curls that looked so much like mine, of course. "I thought it would be nice to invite him, since he's such a good photographer. He can take pictures of your party." Marcus looked up from where he was setting up the folding chairs we'd borrowed from his mother. His blue eyes met mine with an expression I couldn't quite read. "You didn't mention inviting Joel when we planned the guest list, Zephyra." I forced a laugh, the kind that sounded casual but felt tight in my throat. "Oh, it was last minute. I ran into him at the grocery store last week, and when I mentioned Ellie's party, he offered to help with photos. You know how expensive professional party photography is." "Since when do you shop at Whole Foods on the other side of town?" Marcus asked quietly, his voice barely audible over the sound of Ellie tearing open a package of party favors. My sister Calla chose that moment to burst through the front door with her arms full of gift bags and a bottle of wine. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was insane, and I had to stop for more ice because someone," she shot a pointed look at Marcus, "forgot to pick it up like he promised." "I picked up ice," Marcus said evenly. "It's in the garage freezer." Calla's cheeks flushed slightly, but she recovered quickly. "Well, you can never have too much ice, right, Zeph?" She gave me a conspiratorial wink that made my stomach clench. Calla had always been my ally, but lately her support felt more like enabling. The doorbell rang, and I practically jumped to answer it. Joel stood on our doorstep, with his camera bag slung over his shoulder and a wrapped present in his hands. At 35, he still had that effortlessly cool photographer aesthetic that had attracted me to him in college. Worn jeans, vintage band t-shirt, and dark hair that looked deliberately messy. "Hey, Zeph," he said, leaning in for a casual hug that lasted just a beat too long. "Thanks for inviting me. I brought something for the birthday girl." "Joel," I said, my voice pitched higher than normal. Come in. Ellie will be so excited to see you." But as Joel stepped into our living room, I caught sight of Marcus's face. The confusion there was unmistakable, mixed with something that looked almost like hurt. He watched as Joel easily scooped Ellie up for a hug, as she giggled and showed him her new birthday dress, as he complimented the party decorations I'd spent all morning arranging. "Nice place," Joel said to Marcus, extending his hand. "You must be the husband. I'm Joel Vance." Marcus shook his hand with the kind of firm grip he reserved for business meetings. "Marcus Quinnell, and yes, I'm the husband." The emphasis on those last two words was subtle but unmistakable. The party proceeded with the usual chaos of 8-year-olds hopped up on cake and excitement. Joel moved through the crowd with professional ease, snapping candid shots of Ellie blowing out her candles, opening presents, and playing pin the tail on the donkey with her school friends. But I noticed he was also taking pictures of me, helping serve cake, laughing at something Calla said, adjusting Ellie's party hat. Marcus's mother, Greta, arrived fashionably late with an elaborate gift bag and her usual air of polite disapproval. She was 62 and carried herself like a woman who'd never had to question her place in the world. Her greeting to me was cordial but cool. and when she spotted Joel photographing the present opening ceremony, her eyebrows rose nearly to her perfectly styled grey hairline. "And who might this be?" she asked me, in the tone she usually reserved for discussing overpriced restaurant meals. "That's Joel Vance," I said, trying to sound casual. "An old friend. He's helping with photography." "How thoughtful," Greta said, her gaze moving between Joel and Marcus. I don't recall Marcus mentioning hiring a photographer. "It was a last-minute thing," I said quickly. "Joel offered as a favor." Greta's expression suggested she had thoughts about the kind of favors old male friends typically offered married women, but she kept them to herself. Instead, she moved to Marcus's side and whispered something in his ear that made his jaw tighten. The worst moment came during cake time. Joel had positioned himself to get the perfect shot of Ellie making her wish, and from his angle, he was crouched right next to her chair. In the photo he took, which he immediately showed to the gathered adults, it looked almost like a family portrait. Ellie in the center, Joel beside her with his hand on her shoulder, and me standing behind them both smiling. Marcus wasn't in the shot at all. "Beautiful family," said Mrs. Henderson from next door, who'd wandered over with her own camera. "Ellie looks just like her daddy." The comment hung in the air like smoke. Joel's hand was still on Ellie's shoulder. I was still smiling, and Marcus was staring at the three of us with an expression I'd never seen before. "Actually," Marcus said quietly, "I'm Ellie's father." He moved to stand behind his daughter's chair, gently displacing Joel's hand with his own. "Joel is just a friend of my wife's." The correction was polite but firm, and it sent a ripple of awkwardness through the small group of adults. Joel stepped back with an easy smile, but I caught something in his eyes. Amusement, maybe, or calculation. "Of course," Mrs. Henderson said quickly. "I just meant, well, you know how people always say children look like whoever they spend the most time with. But the damage was done. For the rest of the party, I felt like everyone was watching us, Marcus and Joel and me, trying to piece together a puzzle they didn't fully understand. Calla tried to lighten the mood with jokes about Marcus being paranoid, but even her usual charm felt forced. When the last guest finally left, and the living room looked like a tornado had hit it, Marcus began cleaning up with methodical precision. Joel lingered, supposedly to show me the photos on his camera, but really just lingering. "Great party," he said, standing too close as we looked at the camera's display screen. "Ellie's lucky to have such a fun mom." "She's lucky to have two parents who love her," Marcus said from across the room, his voice carrying clearly over the sound of plates being stacked. Joel's smile didn't waver. "Absolutely. Family is everything, right?" After Joel finally left, with promises to email me the photos and vague mentions of getting coffee soon to catch up properly, Marcus and I finished cleaning in silence. Ellie had crashed hard from her sugar high and was fast asleep on the couch, still wearing her party dress. "I'll carry her up to bed," Marcus said, gently scooping our daughter into his arms. As he passed me, he paused. "Zephyra, why was Joel really here today?" The question was simple, direct, and completely terrifying. Because the honest answer, that I'd invited my ex-boyfriend to our daughter's birthday party because I'd been having an affair with him for 3 months and wanted to see if I could get away with flaunting it in front of my husband. Wasn't exactly something I could say out loud. "I told you," I said instead. "I ran into him, and he offered to help with photos. I thought it would be nice to have professional pictures of Ellie's party." Marcus studied my face for a long moment. "You ran into him at Whole Foods?" "Yes. The Whole Foods on Meridian Street, 30 minutes from here." "Yes." My voice was getting smaller. "The same Whole Foods where you said you had to work late last Tuesday, and the Thursday before that." My heart started pounding, but I kept my expression neutral. "I don't know what you're implying, Marcus." "I'm not implying anything," he said quietly. "I'm asking why my wife is shopping for groceries 30 minutes away from our house, on days when she says she's working late, and then inviting the man she happened to run into to our daughter's birthday party without discussing it with me first. The logical part of my brain knew I should apologize, explain, try to diffuse the situation. But the part of me that had been feeling trapped and unappreciated for months, the part that had driven me into Joel's arms in the first place, flared to life instead. "I don't need permission to invite friends to my daughter's party," I said, my voice sharper than I'd intended. "And I don't need to justify where I shop for groceries. Maybe if you paid more attention to what we actually need in this house, instead of hiding in your office all evening, you'd know that the Whole Foods has better produce." Marcus's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. "You're right," he said finally. "I should pay more attention." He carried Ellie upstairs, and I heard him moving around in her room, helping her out of her party dress, tucking her in, probably reading her a story even though she was already asleep. When he came back downstairs, I was loading the dishwasher and trying to look like a normal wife cleaning up after her daughter's birthday party. "I'm going to do some work," Marcus said, heading toward his home office. "It's Saturday night," I protested. "Can't the computers wait?" "Some things can't wait," he said without looking back. I finished cleaning and went to bed alone, telling myself that Marcus was being paranoid and controlling, that I'd done nothing wrong by inviting an old friend to a child's birthday party. But as I lay in the dark, I kept thinking about Mrs. Henderson's comment, how Ellie looked just like her daddy. The problem was, she really did, just not the daddy who'd tucked her into bed tonight. Monday morning at the office felt like stepping into a different world. After the tension of the weekend, my job as an HR manager at Hartwell & Associates felt almost peaceful. Here, I was competent, professional Zephyra, the woman who mediated disputes and maintained employee files with meticulous care. Here, no one questioned my grocery shopping habits or analyzed my guest lists. My phone buzzed with a text from Joel as I settled at my desk with my coffee. "Great party Saturday. Ellie's adorable. Coffee this week?" I smiled despite myself, then quickly deleted the message. The office had an open floor plan, and I could never be too careful about who might see my screen. "Good morning, sunshine," called Rebecca Martinez from the next cubicle over. At 28, she was younger than me, but had been with the company longer, and she had a talent for noticing things other people missed. "How was the birthday party? Did you get good pictures?" "It was wonderful," I said, pulling up my email. "Ellie had a blast. And yes, we got some great shots." "Professional photographer?" Rebecca asked, rolling her chair closer to the partition between our desks. "Or just someone with a good camera?" Something in her tone made me look up. Rebecca was smiling, but there was curiosity in her dark eyes that made me uncomfortable. "Just a friend who offered to help out." "That's nice. Male friend or female friend?" The question felt loaded, though I couldn't pinpoint why. "Male, an old college friend who's a freelance photographer." "Ah." Rebecca nodded, like that explained something. "And your husband was cool with that?" "Why wouldn't he be?" I asked, my voice sharper than I'd intended. Rebecca held up her hands in mock surrender. "No reason. I just know some guys get weird about their wives having male friends. My ex was like that. Total control freak." The comparison stung because it was exactly what I'd been telling myself about Marcus. "Marcus isn't controlling," I said. "He's just protective." "Sure," Rebecca said, but her tone suggested she wasn't entirely convinced. "Well, I'm glad you had a good time. You've seemed stressed lately." Before I could ask what she meant by that, my desk phone rang. The caller ID showed our home number, which was unusual. Marcus typically called my cell phone if he needed to reach me during work hours. "Zephyra," I answered in my professional voice. "Hey, it's me," Marcus said. "Do you have a minute?" "I'm at work, Marcus. Is everything okay? Is Ellie all right?" "Ellie's fine. She's at school. I'm working from home today, and I had a question about the party." My stomach clenched. "What kind of question?" I was looking at the photos on our camera, the ones we took before Joel arrived, and I noticed something. In the background of the shop where Ellie's opening presents, there's a card on the gift table that I don't remember seeing before. I tried to picture what he was talking about, but the morning felt like a blur of wrapping paper and excited children. Okay. It's a small card, handwritten. It says, "For my favorite girl," in what looks like a man's handwriting. Do you know which gift that was with? My mouth went dry. Joel had brought a present, a jewelry box with Ellie's name engraved on it, and he'd written that exact message on the card. But how could Marcus have seen it clearly enough in a background photo to read the handwriting? There were so many gifts, I said carefully. I'm not sure which one you're referring to. The jewelry box, Marcus said, the wooden one with the ballerina inside. Ellie showed it to me after everyone left. Beautiful craftsmanship, expensive, the kind of thing you'd give to someone special. It was just a nice gift from a friend, I said, aware that Rebecca was no longer pretending not to listen to my conversation. A friend who writes "for my favorite girl" on the card. Marcus, I really can't discuss this right now. I'm at work. Right. Of course. There was a pause. We should talk tonight. After Ellie goes to bed. The line went dead, and I sat staring at the phone for several seconds before hanging up. When I looked up, Rebecca was watching me with concern. Everything okay? She asked. Fine, I said quickly. Just some confusion about a birthday gift. But it wasn't fine, and we both knew it. For the rest of the morning, I found it impossible to concentrate on work. Every time my phone buzzed, I expected another text from Joel or another call from Marcus. Instead, I got a series of mundane work emails and a reminder about the quarterly budget meeting. At lunch, I drove to the small cafe where Joel and I had been meeting for the past 3 months. It was 20 minutes from my office, in a part of town where I was unlikely to run into anyone I knew. Joel was already there, sitting at our usual corner table with his laptop open and a half-empty coffee cup in front of him. You look stressed, he said as I slid into the seat across from him. Marcus is asking questions about the party, I said without preamble. About your gift to Ellie, about why you were there. Joel leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed. And what are you telling him? The truth, that you're an old friend who offered to help with photography. That is the truth, Joel said with a slight smile. Just not the whole truth. I wanted to be irritated by his casual attitude, but the truth was, his calmness was part of what had attracted me to him in the first place. After years of Marcus's intensity and constant analysis, Joel's laid-back approach to life felt like a vacation. This isn't funny, I said. He's suspicious. Maybe he should be, Joel said, reaching across the table to touch my hand. Maybe it's time to stop pretending. The suggestion sent a jolt of panic through me. I can't do that. There's too much at stake. Ellie, the house, everything. What about what you want? Joel asked. What about being happy? It was the same question he'd been asking for months, and I still didn't have a good answer. What I wanted was complicated. I wanted the security and stability that Marcus provided, but I also wanted the excitement and attention that Joel offered. I wanted to be a good mother to Ellie, but I also wanted to feel like more than just a wife and mum. I wanted everything, and I was terrified of losing any of it. I need more time, I said finally. Joel nodded, but I could see disappointment in his eyes. Okay. But Zephyra, you can't keep living in 2 different worlds forever. Eventually, something's going to give. I drove back to the office with his words echoing in my head. Rebecca was at lunch when I returned, which gave me a chance to compose myself before facing any more questions. But when she came back an hour later, she had news that made my stomach drop. You'll never guess who I ran into at the sandwich place, she said, settling back at her desk with obvious excitement. Tom Bradley from IT. You know, the guy who does freelance computer work on weekends. I made a non-committal noise, not trusting my voice. Anyway, he mentioned that he's been doing some work for a guy named Marcus Quinnell. Said the guy wanted help recovering some deleted files from his wife's phone. Rebecca paused dramatically. That's your husband, right? The blood drained from my face. What kind of files? Tom didn't say exactly. Something about text messages and photos. Apparently, your husband thinks someone's been deleting stuff from your phone, and he wants to see what was there originally. I felt like I might throw up. Over the past few weeks, I'd been carefully deleting my text conversations with Joel, thinking I was covering my tracks. It had never occurred to me that deleted files could be recovered. That's crazy, I managed. Why would Marcus think someone was deleting things from my phone? Rebecca shrugged. Tom said the guy seemed pretty methodical about it, brought in detailed logs of when things were deleted, cross-referenced with times when you weren't home. Sounded like he'd been planning this for a while. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of panic and forced normalcy. I smiled at coworkers, attended meetings, and responded to emails, all while my mind raced through every text message I'd exchanged with Joel over the past 3 months. How much could be recovered? How far back did the logs go? What exactly had Marcus seen? By 5 o'clock, I was exhausted from the effort of appearing normal. I drove home through rush hour traffic, rehearsing explanations in my head. Maybe I could say Joel had been asking for career advice. Maybe I could claim we'd been planning a surprise for Marcus. Maybe I could convince him that his suspicions were making him paranoid and controlling. But when I walked into our house, I found Marcus in the kitchen making dinner, something he rarely did on weeknights, and humming quietly to himself. He looked up when I entered, and his smile seemed genuine. "Hey," he said, stirring something that smelled like my grandmother's beef stew. "How was your day?" The normalcy of the question, after everything I'd been worrying about, threw me completely off balance. "It was fine. How was yours?" "Productive," Marcus said. "I got a lot done working from home. Oh, and I picked up Ellie from school and helped her start her science project. She's upstairs working on it now." I waited for him to mention the phone, the deleted files, the IT guy, but he just kept stirring the stew and humming. "Marcus," I said finally, "about this morning's phone call." "What about it?" he asked, not looking up from the pot. "You seemed upset about Joel's gift to Ellie." "Did I?" Marcus ladled stew into 3 bowls. "I was just curious about it. It was a beautiful gift, expensive. I wondered what the occasion was." The occasion was Ellie's birthday. "Right." Marcus set the bowls on the table. "Of course, I'll call Ellie down for dinner." As he headed upstairs, I stood in our kitchen feeling like I was losing my mind. Either Marcus was playing some kind of psychological game with me, or he genuinely wasn't suspicious about anything. But if that was true, why had he hired someone to recover deleted files from my phone? Dinner was surprisingly pleasant. Ellie chatted about her science project, something involving plant growth and different types of soil, and Marcus listened with the kind of focused attention that made her beam with pride. He asked thoughtful questions, offered to help her research fertilizers online, and promised to take her to the garden center on Saturday to buy supplies. Watching them together, I felt a familiar pang of guilt. Marcus was a good father. He was patient, involved, and genuinely interested in Ellie's life. He helped with homework, attended school events, and never missed a bedtime story when he was home. The fact that Ellie might not actually be his biological daughter made his devotion somehow more precious, not less. After dinner, Marcus helped Ellie with her homework while I cleaned the kitchen. It was our usual routine, comfortable and domestic. But underneath the normalcy, I could feel something shifting. Marcus was too calm, too pleasant. It felt like the quiet before a storm. "Ellie's in bed," Marcus announced when he came back downstairs at 8:30. "She wants you to come up and say goodnight." I found Ellie already tucked under her covers, surrounded by stuffed animals and the jewelry box Joel had given her. The ballerina inside was spinning slowly, playing a tinkling melody that I recognized as Für Elise. "It's so pretty, Mommy," Ellie said, watching the ballerina turn. Uncle Joel said it reminded him of me because I'm graceful like a dancer. When did he say that? I asked, sitting on the edge of her bed. At the party, when he gave it to me. He said lots of nice things about me. Ellie yawned. He's really nice. I like him. That's good, sweetheart. But remember, Joel isn't your uncle. He's just a friend of Mommy's. I know, but he feels like family. Ellie's eyes were already drifting closed. He looks at me the way Daddy does, like I'm special. The comment hit me like a physical blow. I kissed Ellie's forehead and turned off her light, but her words followed me downstairs. He looks at me the way Daddy does. Marcus was in his office with the door closed. I could hear him talking quietly on the phone, but I couldn't make out the words. I considered knocking, but something held me back. Instead, I went to our bedroom and tried to distract myself with a book. An hour later, Marcus came to bed. He brushed his teeth, changed into pajamas, and slipped under the covers beside me, without saying a word about phone calls or deleted files or suspicious gifts. Marcus, I said into the darkness, are we okay? Why wouldn't we be? He asked. I don't know. You've seemed different since the party. Different how? I struggled to put it into words. Distant, like you're thinking about something else. Marcus was quiet for so long that I thought he'd fallen asleep. Then he said, I've been thinking about a lot of things lately, Zephyra. About our marriage, about Ellie, about what I want for our future. And I think it's time I started paying closer attention to what's really going on in my own life. Before I could ask what he meant by that, his breathing had evened out into the rhythm of sleep. But I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling and wondering what Marcus had discovered, what he was planning, and how much time I had before my two worlds collided in a way I couldn't control. Outside our bedroom window, I could hear the wind picking up, rustling through the trees in our backyard. It sounded like a warning. The call came on Thursday afternoon while I was reviewing employee evaluations. Marcus's name appeared on my phone screen, and for a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail. Our conversations had become increasingly strained since Monday, full of subtext and careful words. Hi, I answered, keeping my voice neutral. Hey, I wanted to let you know that I invited my mom to dinner on Saturday. She's been asking to see Ellie, and I thought it would be nice to have a family meal. My stomach clenched. Greta Quinnell had never been my biggest fan, but lately, her disapproval had become more pronounced. Just your mum? I thought maybe you could invite Calla too, make it a real family gathering. The suggestion sounded innocent enough, but something in Marcus's tone set off alarm bells. Why do you want both our families there? Can't a man want to spend time with the people he cares about? Marcus asked. I made reservations at Romano's for 6:30, the place with the good bread that Ellie likes. Romano's was our special occasion restaurant, birthdays, anniversaries, celebrations. It was also public, with tables close together and servers who knew us by name. Not the kind of place where people had private family discussions. Okay, I said slowly. I'll call Calla. Great. Oh, and Zephyra, you might want to dress nicely. I have a feeling it's going to be a memorable evening. The line went dead before I could ask what he meant by that. Saturday arrived with unseasonable warmth for October. I spent the afternoon getting ready with the kind of care usually reserved for job interviews or court appearances. I chose a navy dress that Marcus had always complimented, styled my dark hair in loose waves, and applied makeup with a steady hand despite the anxiety churning in my stomach. Calla arrived at our house 20 minutes early, as usual. She was wearing a bright red wrap dress that showed off her figure and made her look younger than her 31 years. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, and she carried herself with the confidence of someone who'd never had to question whether she was welcome somewhere. You look gorgeous, she said, giving me a quick hug. But you seem tense. Everything okay? Just tired, I lied. Work's been crazy this week. Where's my favorite niece? Calla called out, and Ellie came running down the stairs in a pink dress with matching shoes. Calla scooped her up for a dramatic hug that made Ellie giggle. Marcus emerged from his office wearing a charcoal suit I hadn't seen him put on. He looked handsome and formal, like he was dressed for something more important than dinner with family. "Ready?" he asked, jingling his car keys. The drive to Romano's was quiet, except for Ellie's chatter about her science project. She'd decided to test whether plants grew better with classical music or pop music, and she was excited to share her hypothesis with Grandma Greta. Marcus listened and asked thoughtful questions, but I caught him watching me in the rearview mirror several times. Greta was already seated when we arrived, looking elegant in a cream-colored blazer and pearls. She stood to hug Ellie and Marcus, then offered me a polite smile and a brief embrace that felt more like a social obligation than genuine affection. "You look lovely, dear," she said to me, but her eyes were assessing in a way that made me uncomfortable. The restaurant was busy for a Saturday evening, filled with families celebrating and couples on date nights. Our server, a young man named David who'd waited on us several times before, led us to a round table near the center of the dining room. It was a good table for conversation, but it also meant we were visible to most of the restaurant. "So," Calla said once we'd ordered drinks, "what's the occasion? It's not anyone's birthday." "Can't a family just enjoy dinner together?" Marcus asked, but there was something in his smile that didn't reach his eyes. Greta was studying the menu with unusual intensity. "The salmon looks good," she said, "though I suppose I should ask if we're celebrating something specific." Marcus was rather mysterious when he called to invite me. "No celebration," Marcus said. "I just thought it would be nice to get everyone together. We don't do it often enough." The conversation during appetizers was pleasant but stilted. Calla told us about her new job at a marketing firm. Greta shared updates about her book club and garden, and Ellie described her science project in detail. But underneath the normalcy, I could feel tension building like pressure in a storm system. "Ellie tells me you had quite the birthday party last weekend," Greta said as our main courses arrived. "With a professional photographer." I nearly choked on my wine. Not professional exactly, just a friend who's good with cameras. "How thoughtful," Greta said. "I don't believe I've met this friend." "Joel Vance," Marcus said helpfully. "Zephyra's college boyfriend." The word boyfriend hung in the air like a challenge. Calla's eyebrows rose, and Greta's expression shifted from polite interest to something sharper. "Ex-boyfriend," I corrected quickly. "From years ago. We were just friends in college." "Actually," Marcus said, cutting his steak with methodical precision, "I did some research this week. You and Joel dated for almost 2 years at State. Pretty serious relationship from what I could find online." My mouth went dry. "I don't know why that matters. That was over 10 years ago." "Of course it doesn't matter," Calla said quickly. "People stay friends with exes all the time. It's very mature." "Is it?" Greta asked. "I suppose that depends on the circumstances." Marcus set down his knife and fork. "The circumstances are interesting, actually. Joel moved back to town about 4 months ago. Zephyra started working late more often about 3 months ago. And last month, our credit card statement showed charges at restaurants and coffee shops I'd never heard of." The blood drained from my face. "Marcus, what are you doing?" "I'm having dinner with my family," he said calmly, "and sharing some things I've learned recently about my wife's schedule." Calla reached across the table to touch my hand. "Zeph, you don't have to explain anything to anyone. If Marcus has trust issues, that's his problem to work on." "Trust issues," Marcus repeated thoughtfully. "That's an interesting way to put it." Ellie was looking around the table with confusion, sensing the tension, but not understanding its source. "Why is everyone being weird?" she asked. "We're not being weird, sweetheart," I said quickly. "The grown-ups are just having a discussion." "About Uncle Joel?" Ellie asked. "I like him. He's nice to me." Greta's expression softened when she looked at Ellie, but hardened again when her gaze returned to me. "I'm sure he is nice to you, darling. Some people are very good at being charming when they want something." "What does that mean?" Calla demanded. "Are you implying something about Zephyra?" I'm not implying anything, Greta said evenly. I'm observing that my son seems troubled, and I'm wondering why. Marcus reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a manila envelope. Since we're all here together, I thought this might be a good time to clear the air about a few things. Marcus, don't, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Don't what? He asked. Don't share information about my own life with my own family. He opened the envelope and pulled out several printed pages. Even from across the table, I could see they were screenshots of text messages. These are from Zephyra's phone, Marcus said conversationally. Messages between her and Joel over the past 3 months. I had them recovered by a computer specialist after I noticed they kept disappearing. Calla grabbed my arm. Zeph, you don't have to sit here and listen to this. This is controlling behavior. Is it controlling to want to know why my wife is texting another man 20 times a day? Marcus asked. Or why she's deleting those texts? Or why she's meeting him for lunch twice a week and lying to me about working late? Greta was staring at the papers in Marcus's hands with an expression of growing horror. Marcus, perhaps this conversation should be private. Should it? Marcus asked. Because according to these messages, Joel has been asking about Ellie quite a bit. About her birthday, her interests, whether she looks like her mother or her father. My heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone at the table must be able to hear it. Marcus, please, not here, not in front of Ellie. You're right, Marcus said, putting the papers back in the envelope. This isn't appropriate dinner conversation, he signaled to David, who hurried over with the check. Actually, I think I'm done eating. Would anyone else like dessert? The question was polite, but the tension at the table was thick enough to cut. Ellie was looking scared now, picking at her chicken fingers and glancing between the adults with worried eyes. I want to go home, she said quietly. Of course, sweetheart, Marcus said, his voice gentle when he addressed his daughter. We'll go home right now. He stood up and threw several bills on the table, enough to cover the meal and a generous tip. Mom, Calla, thank you for joining us. I think Zephyra and I need to have a private conversation. Greta stood as well, her face pale but determined. Marcus, if you need anything at all, you know you can call me. I appreciate that, Marcus said, helping Ellie with her jacket. Calla was staring at me with a mixture of concern and confusion. Zeph, are you okay? Do you want me to come over later? She'll be fine, Marcus said before I could answer. We just need to talk through some things. As we walked toward the exit, I could feel the eyes of other diners on us. Our family drama had been conducted in low voices, but the tension had been obvious to anyone paying attention. I wanted to disappear, to rewind the evening and make different choices, to somehow undo the moment when Marcus had pulled out that envelope. In the parking lot, Greta hugged Ellie goodbye and then turned to Marcus. Call me tomorrow, she said quietly. We'll figure this out. Figure what out? I asked, but she was already walking toward her car. The drive home was silent except for the radio playing softly, and Ellie's occasional questions about why everyone seemed upset. Marcus answered her with patience and reassurance, promising that everything would be okay and that sometimes grown-ups just needed to work through problems. But as we pulled into our driveway, I knew that nothing was going to be okay. The envelope full of text messages was sitting on the dashboard between us, like a bomb that hadn't finished exploding yet. And I had no idea how to defuse it. Sunday morning arrived grey and cold, matching my mood perfectly. I woke up alone in our king-sized bed, with no memory of Marcus coming to bed the night before. The space beside me was undisturbed, which meant he'd probably slept in his office again. Downstairs, I found evidence of his early morning activity, fresh coffee in the pot, Ellie's breakfast dishes already washed and put away, and a note on the kitchen counter written in his precise handwriting, "Took Ellie to soccer practice, back by noon. We need to talk. M." The formality of the note, signed with his initial like a business memo, sent a chill through me. In 12 years of marriage, Marcus had never left me a note that felt so impersonal. I poured myself coffee and tried to think through my options. The text messages Marcus had recovered were damaging, but not necessarily relationship-ending. I could claim they were just friendly conversations that I'd deleted to avoid misunderstandings. I could say Joel was going through a difficult time and needed someone to talk to. I could frame Marcus's investigation as a violation of my privacy and turn the focus back on his controlling behavior. But even as I rehearsed these explanations, I knew they wouldn't hold up under scrutiny. Marcus was too smart, too methodical. If he'd gone to the trouble of recovering deleted messages, he'd probably found other evidence too. My phone rang, interrupting my spiraling thoughts. Calla's name appeared on the screen. "Are you okay?" she asked without preamble. "Last night was intense." "I'm fine," I said automatically. "No, you're not. What the hell was Marcus thinking? Ambushing you like that in public, and in front of Ellie?" Calla's outrage on my behalf felt validating, but it also felt hollow. She didn't know the full extent of what Marcus had discovered, or what I'd actually done to deserve his suspicions. "He's been building up to this for a while," I said carefully. "I think he's been feeling insecure about Joel being back in town." "That's his problem to deal with, not yours," Calla said firmly. "You have every right to have male friends. You had a life before Marcus, and you're allowed to maintain friendships from that life." "I know, but nothing. This is classic controlling behavior, Zeph. He's trying to isolate you from your friends and make you feel guilty for having a social life. Don't let him manipulate you into thinking you've done something wrong." I wanted to tell her that I had done something wrong, that Marcus's suspicions were justified, that the text messages were only the tip of the iceberg. But admitting the truth to Calla would make it real in a way I wasn't ready to face. "What should I do?" I asked instead. "Stand your ground. Don't let him bully you into apologizing for things you shouldn't have to apologize for. And maybe consider couples counseling. It sounds like Marcus has some serious trust issues to work through." When Marcus and Ellie came home from soccer, everything looked normal on the surface. Him filming her goals, her bouncing through the door, talking about practice. But the second she went upstairs, the air shifted. We stood in the kitchen like strangers, and he asked one quiet question. "How long?" I tried to dodge, but there was no point. I told him the truth. 3 months since July, since my late nights on Thursdays started. He didn't explode. He just kept going. Was I in love with the other man? Did I still love him? How could both be true while I was sleeping with someone else? Then he hit me with the question that made my stomach drop. "Is Ellie mine?" He'd been doing math, he said. Ellie's birth date, the 6 weeks I'd taken space and moved in with Calla, the June wedding where I'd shown up as Joel's date, smiling in pictures and tagged as his beautiful girlfriend. The fact that Ellie looks nothing like him, but exactly like Joel, down to the way she runs and tilts her head when she thinks. I tried every weak denial I had left, but we both knew I'd been dodging this truth for 8 years. Marcus said he was getting a legal DNA test and then would make decisions based on facts. He told me to call a lawyer because he was going to protect himself and his interests now. When he went to his office and Ellie's singing drifted down from the shower, I finally called Calla back, and for the first time, I admitted it out loud. Yes, there is a real reason he wants that test.